Good evening. Happy Friday evening. This is our Friday night data chats. I am Chris Gamble with Gamble Data, and I am here to answer your questions live. So, on Friday nights, we talk about everything from data engineering careers, how to get into data engineering, how to um, level up your skills, any questions on SQL, any questions on Python, but mostly the conversation generally revolves around how do I get a data engineering position, and what does it take? Do I need a degree? Do I need uh, certifications? What skills do I need? How do I find a job? Can I find a remote job? Those are all questions that we answer on our Friday night chats. So if you have a specific question about data engineering, be sure to pop it in the chat. If you have a question about SQL or Python, put those in the chat. We will work through it live and get you an answer. So feel free to pop those in the chat. We do also, for those of you that are maybe new to the channel, we do monthly code challenges. Currently, our code challenge is a million record data set. It is in a one big table format. For those of you that don't know, that is a specific data modeling format. One, it's OBT, one big table. But generally, you take that table and break it down into a model, snowflake model, so it's more efficient, uh, more effective, easier to analyze, and then and then create some aggregations. So the specific request this month is to take that one big table of a million rows, break it down into a a snowflake or a star schema. For those of you that don't know what those are, feel free to pop those in the chat and I'll walk through those. But we do also have a video out there on snowflake and star schemas. And then to create some queries that aggregate that data so that provide some sales by month and by quarter and by year, and to do that effectively and efficiently. And whoever has the most efficient, readable, maintainable query at the end of the month will be will spotlight that person and their result during our monthly code review. So be sure that you go out there and do that to find that October code challenge and check out the video. And the video has the link to access the data set and to download it. But for those of you that are in the middle of doing that code challenge, we often use these Friday night sessions as kind of a live mentoring session, a live group mentoring session. And I am just here to answer your questions. That's really, really my goal here. But so if you are in the middle of doing that review, that code challenge, be sure to pop your questions in the chat. I could answer them live. One of the questions that I did get this week specifically for the code challenge is, hey, I'm having some issues with importing the data into my database. And so I think that what I'm going to start with right now is how to do that. There's a lot of options. This person was using I believe was using the import function in SSMS, which if you don't know what SSMS is, it's SQL Server Management Studio. I personally use Azure Data Studio. It's comparable, but it's the newer modern version can also, it I like it a little bit better. It's a little bit more, uh, it's a little prettier than SSMS, a little bit more modern, but very similar. So again, for those of you that did pop on and join early, be sure to pop your questions in the chat as I go through here. Uh, for those of you that have been here before, you know that I'm really an open book. If you have any questions, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been on the side of being a associate director, so I've done hiring. I know what we look for when it comes to hiring data engineers, as well as I had a team of about half software engineers, half data engineers, and a couple of analysts. So So be sure to pop those questions in the chat. Happy to answer any career questions. I've been a senior data engineer for a long time. Uh, Again, been doing this for 25 years. So done a lot, seen a lot in the many years that I've been doing this. But I think we're going to take a look at Azure Data Studio real quick here. I think while we're waiting for people to ask questions and pop on. Hey, Barbara, how are you? Thanks for jumping on. Um, so which teams or roles do data engineers collaborate with most frequently, and what are the typical points of interaction? So it really depends on the organization. When I was in at AT&T in the cybersecurity org, I interacted with, as the associate director, I interacted with like all the C-suite people. So that, I mean, that was maybe a little bit more unique, right? But but it really depends on the orgs. A lot of orgs, you're going to interact. Like a lot of my data engineers and especially my analysts interacted a lot with um, sales, and so the sales leaders and marketing. So there's such a huge need for data for both of those groups, sales and marketing, and they need it like daily. They need to know daily what their marketing campaigns look like, what their sales and their leads look like for what's going on right now. And so they need data. They need data like all the time. Um, some orgs, like the org that I'm in now, we interact a lot with finance and our tax groups as well. That's not as normal. Usually, a lot of times finance, um, they have their own people that they're doing some data analysis directly from like an ERP system, directly from Oracle. But more and more, those orgs are trusting to let go of some of that, uh, and they're allowing the data engineers and analysts and data scientists to take control of that those processes that they're doing and create reports for them so that that frees up their time to do other things. So again, really depends on the org. You're going to deal with project managers a lot. In some orgs, there's a very clear uh, delimitation between the 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 data engineers and the data teams from those marketing and sales teams and product teams. And so there's not a whole lot of direct interaction. But again, when I was at AT&T, we interacted directly with those groups, with our sales leaders, with our marketing leaders, um, to understand what their needs were, and then to create those projects and go back and and do the work that needed to be done in order to get them the reporting that they needed. Um, but yeah, it really varies from company to company. Um, when I was at Cirrus, again, AT&T and T and Cirrus, we interacted directly with the groups, with the sales leaders, with the marketing leaders, with um, at Cirrus they do manufacturing of airplanes, of personal jets, and so even I would interact with like some of our floor leaders, our manufacturing floor leaders, to understand what they needed, um, from a reporting standpoint so that they could get done more efficiently what they needed to get done. And so a lot of times, if my personal opinion is I enjoy those conversations, right? Understanding explicitly what that end user is going to use that data for. And, they've often had their hands in that data for so long, they know what they need from it. They know what the data means. They know generally where it is in the system. And if they could tell you where it is in the system, then generally I get to look in the back end and see, okay, this is how it's flowing into that front end. These are what those fields are, and I can translate that into the model that I needed. to be in. Um, so I love getting to learn other parts of the business over the years, and so I love that interaction. Um, and I think it's important to build those relationships. Again, goes back to what I've talked about before about soft skills and uh, and having those soft skills to be able to have those kind of technical conversations with non-technical people. Um, but yeah, a lot of times your sales and marketing groups know exactly what they want from their data because they've been doing it manually for years, and and they could tell you explicitly not only what they need, but a lot of times where it's coming from. Um, and then you may have to parse it out, and they may have some creative ideas on uh, metrics that they want to measure, but then you could work those things in. But that's a great question. Parva, thank you for always jumping on, man. Awesome. So let's see. A lot of times we don't get a ton of people until a little bit later. I think depending on where you're at in the world, 10 o'clock's either a little late or a little early. 10 o'clock Eastern's a little later, a little early for a lot of people, probably. So usually about 30 minutes. Oh, hey, we got a bunch of people. So yeah, again, this is for you all. This is, kind of like live mentoring for you. So if you have questions about anything data engineering related, pop them in the chat. I am happy to walk through them. Again, even if it is pulling up a database and walking through a SQL question, or pulling up, VS Code and walking through a Python, question, or Azure, whatever the case may be, to, pop them in the chat. I'm happy to walk through whatever you've got tonight. Uh, I'm here to help you to achieve your goals and become a data engineer, or if that's what your goal is, or uh, to help you gain the skills and the knowledge to help you to create a data-driven business for your own business, if that's where you're at in your career. In addition, I've done some consulting, so if that's a direction that you're interested in going in, I'm happy to answer some questions about that. Hey, Dora. Um, my day so far has been great. It's for me, it's wrapping up the end of the week and the very end of Friday, and so it's been a good week. It's been a good week. Thank you for asking. How about you? Hopefully, y'all have had a great week too. Uh, honestly, these are the highlight of my week. These these live calls. I really enjoy them, especially the first 15, 30 minutes sometimes can be kind of slow uh, as people start seeing it and they jump on. Um, but usually once we can start getting some people in here, then we get a pretty lively conversation a lot of times. So, but yeah, day's going so good so far. Thank you, Dora, for asking. Again, any questions at all, pop them in the chat. Happy to answer anything. I'll go back to Parva's question here real quick. Uh, Teams and roles that data engineers collaborate with most frequently. I talked about sales and marketing kind of repetitively a lot, um, but also keep in mind that if you're talking explicitly, you're a data engineer. You're either on a team of this is I've gone been in teams that either you're on a team of other data engineers, or maybe you're on a team of maybe a couple of data engineers, a few analysts, maybe even some software engineers, and you're collaborating across those different disciplines. And so depending on your role, depending on the company, who you collaborate with, who you're talking to most of the time, could change. It again, you're at AT&T in cybersecurity. I talk to sales and marketing probably a couple times a week, and then I talk to, you know, as an associate director, I talk to my team like every day, right? I talk to at least a couple people on my team every day, either through one-on-ones um, or just talking to them about projects that they may be working on, helping them with things, helping them answer questions, whatever the case may be, helping them remove roadblocks. Um, as a actual like individual contributor, uh, often talked with, exclusively talked with like one guy, Norris, that I worked with. He was the analyst, and so I would create the models and pull all the data into our warehouse and set up the model for him, hand off the model to him, and he would take that into Power BI. And he was brilliant with creating some visuals and making it pretty. Not be making things pretty is not uh, something that comes natural to me. It takes a little bit more work, um, which is why I'm not a data analyst, which is why I went the engineering route. But yeah, a lot of times you're collaborating with data analysts and even data scientists. At Cirrus, also worked with the software engineers, as well as with at AT&T. Um, Good evening. What would you suggest to skill up while job searching or while on the job? What might be the expectations from data engineers with the latest incorporation of AI applications? So, I think it's important. One, I'm going to talk a little bit to the AI piece. With AI, I think it's important to understand how to use it effectively to make your work more efficient. Um, Whether you're using ChatGPT or you're using Claude or crap, I forgot the Microsoft name. Um, I can't believe I went blank. I have to look it up. Um, it's gonna drive me nuts if I don't look at it. Copilot. Um, whether you're using any of those three, it's important to understand that you're using it to be more efficient. Copilot. Yeah, it took me a minute. Copilot. Thank you. Um, it, it's important to learn how to use those tools efficiently and effectively, and know um, that they're not going to be perfect. They're not always going to give you the most efficient answer. They're not always going to give you a correct answer. It's important to know, that that piece, and to know that you could use it to kind of get started really quickly, but know that you're either going to spend your time up front writing it, or you're going to spend your time in the back end troubleshooting the errors in it. So you're kind of balancing that, but there's a kind of a happy space in between of using it to quickly write what you need to write, so that you're not having to type it all out, especially if you're not a really quick typer, really fast typer. Um, and then you copy and paste it and then make your changes, especially if you could look at it as you get used to it, as you get used to coding, as you get used to Python and SQL. You'll be able to look at it and know almost instantly, okay, I need to change this, this, and this. And there's a pattern when you use AI of the things that they get wrong. So you could usually quickly know, okay, these are the things I need to look for when it spits out this code. And keep in mind, it's going to be generic, right? You're going to have to adapt it to whatever your data set is. Um, if it's not generic and you're copying and pasting data directly into those tools, then just be careful with that too. Especially if you're not using a internal AI. A lot of companies now, like at AT&T, we had a internal AI tool that we could use, and it was private, and so it was more secure. And so that way, if we put things that were more proprietary in it, then it wasn't a concern, right? It was internal and it was secure. So it's data engineering, as hard as it sounds, I'll get to that. But upskilling while you're job searching, I heard this earlier. I listened to Mavens of Data, their podcast. If you don't listen to that, they have some great. They're generally around more focused on data analysts. But if you don't listen to that, they're great. They have great podcasts, Mavens of Data, and but I heard it from them too that SQL is always going to be the number one thing, whether you're an analyst, an engineer, or a scientist. SQL is pretty much the thing that you need to know. And then for engineers, the next thing is going to be Python. Python is pretty prevalent throughout. Maybe not the next thing. Maybe the third thing is Python, but it kind of flips back and forth. It really depends on the company that you're looking to get into, the industry you're looking into, and the part of the world that you're in. For a data engineer, that second piece could be cloud, right? There's such a need to have those cloud skills as a data engineer. Most companies are either 1 foot in the cloud, 1 foot still on prem, or they're almost completely in the cloud, or they're wanting, and there's still that case where we have people that are still on prem and they're working towards being in the cloud. And so having those cloud skills, having the understanding of how to create resources in Azure, how to set up a Synapse resource and to create link services and to set up your integrated runtime, and how to do that efficiently and effectively so that you get a consistent connection, a consistent output, and you don't have issues with connectivities and things like that. Being able to set up your key vault, being able to link that key vault to your Synapse or your ADF resource, understanding all that in Azure. I mean, those are all Azure resources, but making sure that you have those skills. If you don't already, that would be the direction that I would spend my time in, both while you're skilling up, trying to get a position, as well as after you get into that position, continuing to skill up on that, because that will continue to take you through your career, increasing the depth of your knowledge on how to set all that up and how to use those tools effectively and efficiently will take you far beyond an entry level position. The expectations from data engineers with incorporation AI, job search and all. Yeah, those are the big things. Whether you, and again, I've said this before a couple times in here, but make sure that when you are targeting a cloud platform to learn, there's the three big ones, right? There's Azure, GCP, and AWS. With Azure having about 70-ish% of the market, and then AWS having about 30%, 25-30%, and GCP just shows up on a handful of things anymore, or right now. That may grow, especially for small, medium-sized businesses. It has a tendency to be more cost efficient sometimes for smaller businesses. So understanding things like BigQuery and how to use it is important. It could be important depending on the industry and the location of the world that you're in. But yeah, cloud is going to continue to be important, going to continue to evolve as we move through all that. And again, learning and this piece is a kind of with experience. As you have experience doing things, you'll learn how to set those things up efficiently. You can, if you have this desire, You could look at oh my gosh, my brain keeps on going blank tonight. But you could look at Terraform and how to write Terraform scripts so that your resources get set up in a consistent manner every time you need to set them up. So, you know, Terraform for data engineers, it's not real popular. You don't see it on a lot of job recs, but it is super handy when you're looking at maybe moving from um, engineering to architecture as you're moving into like a cloud architecture role. Um, and that's for further down your path, right? It's not necessarily something that you absolutely need as a data engineer, but definitely as a cloud architect if you want to progress in that direction. Um, yeah. So Doris says, "Is data engineering as hard as it sounds?" Um, there's and again, I heard this on Mavens today when I was listening to the podcast, the last podcast that they have, um, and it's on Amazon it's on Amazon Music if you want to take a look. But um, they even said today that for data scientists and data analysts, like there's a list of stuff that you need to know and you need to study. For data engineers, like the list is huge. There's so many potential tools and resources and platforms out there that you can use as a data engineer that may be required for a job role. Like it's hard to sometimes target just a specific set of things. However, I will say that generally the ETL tools are pretty consistent, like AWS Glue, Synapse, um, even SSIS. They all have the same kind of feel to them, right? They all have this visual piece of it where you're dropping in a task and you're configuring that task, and they all have some nuances. They each have a little bit different nuance to them. They each have different strong suits and pros and cons. But each ETL tool out there, once you learn a couple, you start to learn, okay, these are the transferable skills that I can take into this next ETL tool. A lot of them, you know, if you target a job, you see that they're using an ETL tool that you've really not played with before, you've really not had a chance to use. A lot of them have, free some type of free trial, and if they don't have a free trial, then you get on Udemy or you get on LinkedIn Learning, and you could usually find some education, some trainings to find and go through so that you could walk into those interviews and say, "Hey, I don't have any experience in this, but I have experience in these other tools and I've done this training. So I feel like I could walk in here and be productive, um, given my background and given the fact that I have at least some exposure to it." Um, I wouldn't, there's a lot to say data engineering. Um, you need to love, you either love it or you hate it, right? I mean, uh, each personality, depending on your personality, you may love data engineering, you may love data analysis, you may love being a data scientist. If you are a introvert and you love being the hero behind the scenes, data engineering is for you. If you are that person that loves to interact with other people, that really wants to take the data and show this beautiful graph that really helps people understand the data, then being a data analyst, that's going to be your direction. If you love being able to predict the future and being able to help the org make future driven decisions, then that data scientist is the role that you'll want to target. Um, so each of those have a little bit different nuance to them. They all have similar skills. It's important for all of them to exist in an organization. They all have their place, um, and they all work together, right? You will interact with all three of those people all three of those positions, regardless of which of those three that you're sitting in. Um, but yeah, it and I love data engineering. I love being the person behind the scenes that does the magic to get all the stuff from all the different places and pulls it all together into one place. Um, I've done that for so long, and I love it. I genuinely love um, interacting and learning new systems and new tools. And so, as a data engineer, I get to do that all the time. Right? There's always something new coming down the pike. Um, you know, at the beginning of my career, I used crystal reports. There's this thing called crystal reports. If you don't know what it is, go out and look it up. I'm sure it's online somewhere. But crystal reports for reporting, I created DTS packages, which were an early version of SSIS, um, and and created pipelines and identified data sources and how to pull them in, where to pull them into, and then I learned Python, and like that's when I learned Python, that's really what started taking my career to the next level. And because there's so much that you could do with Python, there's so much more. You gain so much more in-depth understanding of programming and data structures, and um, and just being able to do your exploratory data analysis and being able to do your transforms and your cleaning with Python. And especially as data has evolved and we've moved from so much of our data coming through as text and CSV files or in tab delimited files and moved into structures like JSON and XML and uh, and APIs, right? APIs were such a huge thing, whether that be SOAP. For those of you that don't know what SOAP is, you are lucky. Uh, SOAP was not as fun and easy to play with as REST APIs are, um, but but it, using Python was a really a career booster for me, and because I think because it shows um, hiring managers that you have that mindset that you can parse out those things and be logical about it, and that you could take complex concepts and break them down into things that actually work in real life. So again, any questions at all, pop them in the chat. Happy to talk through things. I really do enjoy these conversations on Friday nights. So again, thanks Dora, Parva, um, and everybody for joining so far tonight and asking questions. You all uh, do a good job. Y'all are consistently here, so I love it. It's great. I appreciate it. Um, but yeah, be sure to. But I mean, Dora asks, is it as hard as it sounds? I mean, it's not hard. I wouldn't say it's hard. There are complexities. Um, Even after 25 years, I either feel like I am on top of the mountain and I really know what I'm doing, really have a good grasp, and I've really accomplished a lot today, or I feel like I'm under the mountain and why did they even hire me? Why do they continue to pay me? Um, and we all have those days. I mean, we all, uh, as a data engineer, we all have those days. Um, One skill every data engineer should have: SQL. I mean, hands down, you need to have SQL as a data engineer. A pretty good foundation of SQL. Um, and then I'll say that on the technical side, SQL. On the soft skills side, you need to have that. I've talked about this before, but that passion for continuous learning. The fact because you will, as a data engineer, you will always be learning, right? There will always be something new that you don't know. Even after 25 years, there are still things that I don't know, that I haven't haven't run into before, haven't experienced before, or there's a brand new tool or a brand new library or a brand new function. A few years ago, we we got polars, right? And for a Python library, and that was a huge step. That made a huge difference in speed and in being able to process things. And like I really love polars as an alternative to pandas, right? When you're using Python. For those of you that don't know, those are two Python libraries that you could use for um, doing data analysis, for doing data engineering, uh, cleaning data, things like that, exploratory analysis of your data sets. And that was a big thing. Um, Parquet files, you know, being able to put things into Parquet files and put them into a data lake, and uh, that was a big deal. But yes, one skill, and I gave you 54, but the two, again, technical side SQL, soft skill side, um, definitely that hunger and that passion for learning and for data, of course, but learning. Honestly, that it the fact that things have evolved and changed so much in data engineering over the years is what's kept me personally engaged. Um, my father told me early on in life uh, that I would get bored in just about anything that I did if it wasn't something that was constantly changing, and that's held true. This is something that is constantly changing. There's some things that are steady, that are consistent, right? SQL's been around for 50 years, but but it's constantly changing, and that's the exciting piece. And for some people, that's the challenging piece, right? Is that keeping up with all the change and staying remaining relevant. Um, you don't have to, just keep in mind, you don't have to know everything, but being able to adapt and be flexible enough and want to learn those new things is important. Great question, Dora. Thank you. Awesome. So, um, so again, for those of you that don't know, we do monthly code challenges. We're about almost through the month of October. Uh, the October code challenge is out on the website, gambledataengineering.com. If I move my head, you'll see the website back there. Um, my big old head, and you could go there, get on there, and go to the services page and access our Gamble data sphere, and you'll be able to find the October code challenge and download the data set and read about what the ask is for this month. And then during our review, then I will spotlight whoever had the best answer. So I know that we've got a handful of people out there that are working on that as well. Next week on Friday, um, next Friday, my Friday evening stream is going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern. We have I'll be doing an interview with CJ Watkins. He is uh, he was a liberal arts teacher, and he is moving into data science. And so we'll be talking to him about his transition from education into data science as kind of a mid-career career changer, and his thoughts on the difference between being data driven and being data guided. And so I'm super excited about that. In the Gamble data sphere for next month's code challenge, or the next one, can you please add some SQL questions? Yeah, so you want some specific SQL questions? I can do that. Yeah, we can do that. It, this time, this one is around writing, some SQL queries to do those aggregations, and to be sure to send back those what those SQL queries are, to so I could evaluate those and figure out who had the most efficient answer. But we could make I could definitely write some more explicit SQL questions. Absolutely, it's a great suggestion. Thank you. And for those of you that don't know, we do have a Discord server as well. Um, it's not real chatty right now, but I'm hoping that it will be as we get more people on there. Uh, Especially now that that you all helped me with the fact that the uh, the link had expired, and I changed the link to be a non-expiring link. So now the link will work. For those of you that don't know, here's the link to the Discord channel. Um, but yeah, so jump on the Discord, and you could ask questions on the Discord channel as well, in between weeks, and they could be something that I can spotlight during the our lives on Friday. Um, cool, and that's the Discord link for those of you that want to jump on the Discord, and join that community. So super excited about that. Our community is continuing to grow little by little, and we continue to get more people. So super excited. Hopefully, you all are getting something out of the content, out of these Friday night conversations that we have, and and that you're learning. We've had a couple people over the past several weeks jump on and say, "Hey, I got a new position," and I've been super excited. Uh, my the person that one of the people that I've been mentoring, she got a new position this past week. It's as a DBA, and so sometimes you take what data position that you could get, so you get your foot in the door. And so she's gonna start as a DBA, and I am so ecstatic for it. It is so awesome. So I'm super excited for her. She's getting into a really good company, and she's going to be able to start to practice those SQL skills and get into databases, and she'll be able to learn from there, and hopefully continue to grow in that business that she's moving into. So super excited for Doreen, and I know that she'll do well. But yeah, I've got I do mentoring as well, and so for those of you that do need some one-on-one mentoring, don't hesitate to reach out, and if I've got some time, then I'm happy to set up some time with you. But yeah, super excited. Over the past several weeks, the handful of people that have come on and said that they found positions and had appreciated the content. So awesome. Well, if anybody else has any other questions, be sure to pop them in the chat. Thank you all for jumping on. Uh, I've again really enjoyed these Friday night chats. We really get into some good conversation a lot of times. Yeah, I'm gonna jump back to this question here. While you're job searching, it's important. Yeah, it's important to build your portfolio, right? And we've talked about this before. Go out, make sure that you create a Git repository to put all of your code examples in, to put all your pipelines in. You could tie ADF directly to a Git repository and push all of your pipelines out to it. It pushes out and saves those pipelines in JSON out in that code repository, and then other companies and other businesses, can you give them that link and share it with them, and they could look at what your actual work has been and see the good work that you've done. Um, so be sure that you do that, especially as a data engineer. Having that portfolio of different projects that you've done either personally or whatever you can share professionally. A lot of times professionally you can't share a lot of things because it's proprietary information to the company, and you can't legally share it. But create a portfolio in uh, personally. A lot of times again, you get into Azure and AWS, and there's a lot of things that you do out there for free, um, without having to spend any money. In addition, go out and write some Python scripts, um, to do full end to end, data engineering, ETL scripts, right? You could write a complete Python script that will go out, access the data source, pull the data, do any cleansing, push it into your data warehouse or your database. Um, and then from there, I would even practice connecting, make sure that you're setting up a model, make sure that you're breaking that down and using and practicing different different schemas, right? Whether that be Snowflake or whether that be the one big table concept, whatever, facts. If you want to break it up to facts and dimensions, you want to do a Snowflake model, whatever the case may be, practice creating those models. Identify, practice creating indexes. Practice identifying whether you need a inner join or a left join, and what your join criteria are going to be. Um, and how to make things efficient. Thanks for your insight. What's one area in data engineering where you think we could have a bigger impact on business outcomes? How can we as data engineers contribute to making that happen? Um, you know, the biggest thing that we could do, uh, again, it depends on the maturity of the business that you're in. Um, in some cases, you'll be walking into something where you are walking into bare bones, and they may not have much of a data warehouse at all. There are definitely businesses out there that are still in that mode where, in fact, I'm talking to a business now that, um, next week from Monday, um, where they're still doing almost all their reporting in Excel, and they don't have a data warehouse. They don't have an warehouse, analytic warehouse. They don't have an OLAP database to be able to use. And so in those cases, in that case, the big impact for data engineer is going to be to access those different systems that they use and get all that data into a data warehouse, and to start creating those models so that it is automating all those manual data pulls that they're doing. Um, Honestly, that right there, automating manual processes, is one of the biggest impacts that you can have on a business. Identifying what people are doing manually with data now, and how you can make it more efficient, whether that be by identifying new data sources to pull into an existing warehouse, um, and combining it with with other existing data, because a lot of times people are taking reports that other people are making, and they're saying, how do I export this to Excel? Well, they're probably exporting it to Excel because they're doing some additional calculations on the other end, but they don't realize that they could just ask, hey, can you add this to that? Um, and then they could, if they still want it in Excel, they could still export the whole thing, but you can make sure that they have the whole picture, um, and they don't have to do any work. They just hit a button, they export it, and it's there. Um, that's one of the biggest impacts that you could have on the business, making things more efficient, removing, man hours from that equation, and you're not taking away anybody's job. There is oftentimes, most of the time, more work uh, than any group can handle anyways. So removing that need of all that manual extra effort, uh, just frees them up to do other work. Um, Now, as data engineers, we are contributing in larger organizations, right? In more mature data organizations, we are contributing to all the data that gets fed into AI, all the data that gets fed into machine learning, all the data that gets fed into reporting. Without us, there's no data to do those things. There's no data for AI to train from. There's no data for machine learning models to learn from. And so we're setting those things up. Now, data scientists often have learned how to take the data and manipulate it and get it into machine learning, um, into a, into a data set and into a format that they could use for their machine learning algorithms and their machine learning programs that they build, but and the tools that they have. Um, but that's not what a data scientist should be spending their time on. We should be creating those models, setting up those models, having those conversations with our data scientists, and partnering with them to understand what their needs are so that we push that data to them in the format, in the in the dimensions and the facts and the the in with the model concept that they need in order to train their machine learning models, um, and in order to identify those you know key points that will help the business continue to grow. So that's, I mean, that's our input, and that's our impact on orgs, is the fact that without us, none of those things happen. Without data engineers, there is no AI. There is no predictive analytics. There is no pretty charts and graphs uh, for the historical reporting, right? The we're how that we're the data that helps to populate those different things. That's my long-winded rant of an answer. Um, but that's how we contribute to make that happen. And I think that goes, that goes back to the earlier question of who do you collaborate with, right? That goes back to your earlier question of what teams and roles do data engineers collaborate with most frequently. Um, it, Having those conversations, understanding what the needs of the business are, having those conversations, like for me, as at AT&T, um, the first thing that I did as an associate director was to sit down um, with each of the C-suite, um, each member of the C-suite, right? I sat down, I reported to the COO, and so with Amy, I talked to her all the time. Um, but then getting a chance to sit down with Jill, who was uh, our sales officer, and um, with our all of our heads, our CXO and our COO and CEO, and talk to them about what's your what do you what's your vision for the future of the organization? What things in your mind are going to help the business move forward and to grow? And then from there, you could identify what data is needed, right? You back into, get their vision, get what their thoughts are, get what their concepts are, and back into what data that you could provide, that you could gather to help them to make those decisions quickly and efficiently, um, and to help get the data to your analyst and your scientists to help to create the reports and the tools that are needed in order to make those decisions. So that's how we impact things, is being involved in those conversations from the beginning, from early on, as we can. so many times the data teams are thought of last when things happen. Um, and it happens everywhere. It's there's no business that is excluded from this. A lot of times, data engineers, BI teams, data teams are not thought of in a project until towards the end, and they realize, oh crap, we need reporting for this thing, for this change, for this new tool, for this new platform that we're implementing. It's something as innocuous as changing phone systems can make a huge impact your uh, in your data platform, right? And the person that is implementing that phone system, that project manager or that program manager, may not think of the data teams, and so that's why it's so important to have a leader that's involved in those conversations, that knows, hey, and has the confidence and the courage to raise their hand and say, hey, we need to be involved in those conversations from day one, so that we could be prepared to um, have a smooth transition into this platform as we sunset our old platform and bring out our new platform. And there are some groups, some orgs that are better at that than others, some businesses that are better at that than others, um, and some that aren't. But yeah, there's so many impacts that we can have on a business. Um, Learning how to be proactive and how to identify the problems coming down the pike and the changes coming down the pike is something that you learn from experience over time, but it's important to learn. That was a really long-winded answer. Sorry. Good question though. I really do love your questions. You always have awesome questions. Thank you. Awesome. Well, if anybody else has any other questions, be sure to pop them in the chat. I'll be around as long as we continue to get questions. Um, Again, happy to answer any questions about SQL, Python, um, cloud tools, how to get into a data engineering role, uh, and what that looks like. So, and if we don't get many more questions, I'll probably wrap it up here in a few minutes. But we've had some decent conversation tonight. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. I really do. It really, this is the highlight of my week. I love getting on these and talking to you all. So thank you for jumping on, and thank you for staying on, and I appreciate it. It's always a good time for me. Hopefully it is for you too. Um, awesome. Kind of a quieter night. Last week was really popular. Again, next week it's going to be 5 p.m. Eastern, so I apologize. It's going to be super early for some of you. And I know that you may not. No problem. Anytime. Hopefully they help. Yeah. So I apologize. Next week will be 5 p.m. But again, even if you just get a chance to see the recording afterwards, I really think that it's going to be a great interview with CJ, and he really does have some great thoughts on uh, talking to businesses about being data guided instead of data driven. Um, and I'll give you kind of a a sneak peek of what that looks like. Right? Is you know CJ's concept of being data guided instead of data driven is all about the fact that business owners, small SMBs, right, small medium sized business owners have, and sales managers, sales leaders, have such an intuition about what they need to do. Um, and you'll find this in big corporations too, right? From sales leaders, they have such a drive that they know in their gut where they need to spend their time, who they need to spend their time on, and how they need to sell, that it's sometimes hard to convince them that this is the data, right? This is the direction that the data is telling us to go into. Um, and somewhere in between, being data driven and data guided is and intuition altogether is where the data guided piece lands, and that is where CJ's passion lies, is teaching people that you could still use your intuition in combination with the data in order to make these decisions. You don't have to 100% rely on the data to tell you the answer. You can still use your gut. You still use your intuition and let the data help to guide you to make those decisions maybe a little bit quicker, to give you confidence and facts behind those decisions. Um, and to let the data guide you in your decision making instead of drive you towards a decision. Um, so that's going to be the conversation that we have next week. Super excited about it. Super excited about CJ coming on and talking to us about his transition from education into data career, um, and really looking forward to that. I think it'll be a great episode, great live stream. But be sure you jump on for that. Be sure that come with questions. He again, he's a mid-career changer, so it, mid-career changer, and so he has that experience of being an educator for a good chunk of his life so far, and now he's going to move into a data career, and he's going to he's wrapping up his master's degree in data science, and really really super excited about that interview next week. I think it'll be very insightful for everybody, even whether you're looking to go into data engineering or data science or data analysts roles. Really going to be cool to see what it looks like moving from one career to another. You too. Thank you, Parva. All right. Well, I think I'm down to Parva. So, everybody, have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you all back here at 5 p.m. Eastern next Friday. Be sure you come with questions. CJ's super excited about being on as well. And I will see you all again next week. Thanks, guys.